What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. And earlier we were talking about some of these claims being put out about Syria don't stand up to examination. The one about, how American forces saw the chemical weapons attack on the radar. They saw the planes and they saw the bombs. And radar doesn't get a return off chemicals. So that story is already discredited. So they're already out there with another one. They've deployed the Bex howitzer to fling the poo at us just as hard as they can. Next, they're going to have the Bex stealth bomber over our heads just trying to bury us in this stuff. And now Israel is claiming that one of their intelligence units, you know, the by way of deception, thou shalt do war people, those guys, overheard Syrian officials talking about the chemical attack on the radio. Really, I can just imagine somebody getting ready to commit a war crime that's going to result in an attack on one's own country, getting on the radio and say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and drop a banned illegal chemical substance on our civilians here, and I don't care who hears me broadcasting about it. But that's the latest claim coming out of Israel, and if you refuse to believe it, then you must be a dirty, filthy, Jew-hating anti-Semite who wants Hitler to come back and gas the Jewish babies in the ovens. Twice! Now, I've been talking about the very real possibility that getting into a war with Russia is going to be a bad thing. And I've been talking about how Russia's latest generation of nuclear reentry vehicles, the MIRV warheads, are themselves maneuverable. Now, the entire U.S. ballistic missile defense system, going all the way back to Reagan's Star Wars, operated on the presumption that once the MIRV warhead was released from its bus, that's the upper stage of a nuclear missile that actually aims the individual warheads at targets and then releases them, the warheads would follow a predictable ballistic path to target. Well, that's not valid anymore because the latest generation of Russian reentry vehicles are maneuverable. They don't follow a predictable ballistic path. They swerve, they dipsy-doodle, they go up and down, they throw corkscrews in the sky. And presumably China has shared that technology as well. And by way of confirmation, the head of the U.S. Strategic Command is now saying that the U.S. military has no defense against Russian nuclear missiles. Very good reason not to get into a war with them. Another story coming on out here. This is from Microsoft Network, amazingly enough. Is the F-35 a $1 trillion mistake? And they're talking about the fact that when it comes to military procurement and politics, a project can reach a point where the sheer weight of its economic impact and political heft make it impossible to kill. And that seems to be the case here. There are 3 versions of the F-35 requiring a total of some 300,000 parts. And Lockheed is parceling out the subcontracting to all but 5 states, Alaska, Hawaii, Louisiana, North Dakota, and Wyoming. I understand we don't really have an aviation industry per se here in Hawaii. I mean, obviously we have airports and aircraft maintenance and the military, but we don't actually have factories that make these kind of things. But it's a huge boondoggle. It's very expensive, and there is a strategic weakness right there, because all of our latest weapons are hideously expensive and not all that effective. When we get into a real shooting war and these things get shot up, they have to be repaired or replaced. And because they are very expensive to build, they're very expensive to repair and replace. And in every war in history, the side that runs out of money first loses. Now, the other day we were talking about how the Navy's T-45 training jets were having a bit of a problem, where apparently a lot of the instructors who use these to train naval aviators were refusing to fly in them because of safety concerns, problems with the oxygen systems. Must be the same one they use in the F-22. Well, the U.S. Navy apparently decided, with all of these instructors literally on the verge of mutiny, that they had to take a look at the situation, and now the Navy has grounded, temporarily, the T-45 Goshawk training jet while they look into the situation and see what's going on. And probably in this current climate, they'll come back and say it was just in the imaginations of the instructors, get back in the plane and fly them. But they're going through the moves. All right, let's grab 2 more phone calls. Francis in Vancouver, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. I wanted to talk about a really good article that appeared on Henry Macau about 3 weeks ago, and it concerns the Canada-EU trade deal. And that's all nice, you know, we're going to trade with the EU and settle a lot of little disputes, and we'll make lots of money. Only there's a problem with it. Hidden away in the core of it is this totally incongruous clause. And it's tied to the fact that the Bank of Canada was created in the 1930s in the depths of the Great Depression so that the government, which is a sovereign nation of Canada, can lend itself, just print money for great capital works and build bridges and dams or nuclear reactors and do it pretty much interest-free. And this is how, like, say, for example, British Columbia and Quebec and Alberta financed big hydroelectric projects that were the envy of the world and that have enriched us to this day. Now, in 1974, Pierre Trudeau, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, discontinued that. And the Bank of Canada, though, still exists, and it still has that legal ability, but we were not using that ability, and the result is that we've had to pay $1.8 trillion in extra interest on debt because we haven't used that ability since 1974. There's actually a big court case about that.
The Comer lawsuit.
In this CETA, I want to just read to you this, if it's not too boring. Up until now, the Bank of Canada has always had the power to make those low-interest loans to the Government of Canada, but has never used it. Politicians have always maintained that to do so would be inflationary. That, of course, has never been true. There's absolutely no evidence of that at all. Now, to the present day, Finance Minister Morneau and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, for some inexplicable reason, have included a clause in the CETA agreement that would forever eliminate the ability of the Bank of Canada to create low-interest loans for the governments of Canada. One could be forgiven for asking why a clause on a banking and money creation would be included in a trade agreement, not to mention a clause that will have a catastrophic impact on Canada and Canadians. I would suggest to you that such a decision could not come at a worse time when the world finds itself in an increasingly perilous financial situation.
I would agree with you.
So that just shows...
And we did make a big thing about it when the Comer lawsuit was out there, and the Canadian government literally banned the Canadian media from even reporting on that lawsuit. It's basically, it's a giveaway to the banks who are now loaning the money for these projects at interest. That's even more inflationary than having the central bank create the money and loan it to the government interest-free.
Yeah. Well, it's a big present to the Rothschilds and the bankers of the City of London.
Yes.
And I guess, you know, just everything, like I had a lot of hope here with Trump, you know, getting in and Brexit. It looks like everything's just turning against us now. And these globalists are coming back with a redoubled fury just to crush everybody.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. They've hit the panic button and they're trying to slam the door shut on our slave cage as fast as they can. Anyway, Francis, we're going to let you go.
Thank you.
We're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. We're just on the verge of getting into the economic news here, but we've got 2 more phone calls, then we're going to close the lines again. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hey, Mike. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. The first one is just an incidental point, and that is about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was announced that the major components of the 75th Rangers were being deployed to Syria for humanitarian missions.
Yeah.
Now, I'm here to tell you, as an ex-Ranger, that doesn't happen ever.
No.
Ever. So this has been in the works for months because the deployment probably took them a month to plan. But That's the first thing. The second thing is our Middle Eastern policy has not been ours for 60 years.
Yes.
I mean, look at the people who are running it. The banks are running it. It's the Israeli lobby. It's the same people. There's a confluence of things from George Soros to the banks to the guy who just got off the phone about the Canadians and not being able to print their own money. All this stuff. And who gets all the money? Soros is getting the money. The Israelis are getting the money. The bankers are getting the money. The media is trumpeting all this stuff. Who are they? It all comes down to the same people who've been running our Middle Eastern policy, and by default, the entire foreign policy, because it drives everything else, for the last 50 years, and look where we're at. We have not followed our own national interests in 50 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. And as I said in the first hour of the show, the thing that concerns me and should be concerning Trump and should be concerning the American war hawks is that the drivers of this new rush to war may be totally unconcerned over the possibility that the U.S. could probably lose this. Because especially coming from the point of view of the bankers, they love wars. They loan to both sides. They don't care which side wins or loses. They make money off of both sides. And as far as Israel is concerned, if the U.S. and Russia can be goaded into a mutually destructive nuclear war, who comes out on top? Israel, with its nuclear arsenal, would be in control of all the Middle East oil, and through that oil, basically in control of the whole world. And so the people who are pushing the United States into this war aren't intending for it to win.
Mike, let's take it since 1990. Since 1990, we've been at war with Iraq twice. We've destroyed Iraq. We're now partitioning in it. And by the way, the Israelis when I was there, were crawling all over Mosul. There were all sorts of Israelis all over the northern. We've been looking to.
They were buying it all up on pennies on the dollar.
Right. We've trashed Libya. We've trashed Yemen. We've trashed Syria. They want us to trash Iran. What have we won in any of this? We have not won anything.
The hatred and disdain of the rest of the world. That's what we've gotten for all of this.
And they've got a fragmented Middle East that they can expand into.
Yep.
They've won every single one of those. We've lost every single one. We've lost our money. We've lost our men. We've lost our equipment. We've lost the goodwill of the world and the trust of the world. But they've won every time. They're the only winners.
I agree.
And it all comes down to them.
I agree. I agree.
Anyways.
And as I said, no, I understand. And as I said, Israel's long-term interests may prefer a world in which the U.S. and Russia have destroyed each other. And that is something I wish
our about us.
Yeah, no, they don't. And I think the people in Washington, D.C., who see themselves as friends of Israel over at AIPAC need to understand that, Israel demands a lot of support and loyalty, but they never give it back. It's always a one-way street. And Israel may see its own fortunes improve with a destroyed United States of America.
Your old description of sucking the parasite sucking the host into a hollow husk, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yep. Okay?
So, all right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks. We're going to take one more phone call from Mike in Kentucky. Mike, what's on your mind?
I missed what you said there when they clicked me over. It cut you off.
I just asked what was on your mind.
Oh, well, two things. Yesterday I clicked on your computer internet security section. I took a screenshot of it. I've never seen a page like that where it says there was no content, content not available or something like that. And so I went through and got the URL number that I have saved in my favorites for that page, and it worked just fine. But
well, we're under heavy attack right now, and
that's what I was going to suggest is that a lot of what you say is true, and I think the technocratic state is probably in a bit of a panic mode, and they don't have unlimited resources, so we need to just keep at it. I don't think they have the ability to take care of everybody. They certainly don't have enough prison cells for everybody. So
yep.
The issue that you're talking about with Israel, though, what reminded me of is near the end of Hunt for Red October in the movie, I don't know if it's in the book, but the Russian commander, like lieutenant, he took all the safety measures off of the torpedo, and it came back at him, and right before they're about to blow up, the guy goes, "You idiot, you've killed us."
Yes.
And I think Israel needs to realize that, because one of the things that Fukushima brought out is that Nantucket has one of those reactors of the same design that was at Fukushima, but they keep extending the permits for the fuel pools to more and more rods to be packed into these pools.
It's not just the fuel ponds. They're extending the permits for these reactors to operate, and reactors are built for a finite lifespan, because under the neutron bombardment, the metal in the containment vessel starts to break down, and because the reactors are very expensive to replace. So, that's all across the country. Where
Russians can do whatever they want with their reentry vehicles spiraling this way or that, or dipsy doodles. There's so much fuel sitting around here. It's down to 90, as I understand it. They've decommissioned a bunch of them, but it's still down to 90 just in the several states in the main part of America, the mainland. But then there's a few in Canada. There's a bunch in Europe. But in an extended period of chaos, what happens if the power goes out and the guys that are manning the pumps and feeding the diesel fuel to the generators, they got to eat, They got to be taken care of. If there's an extended period of chaos, at some point they're probably going to throw up their hands and head south to the southern hemisphere. We're talking, and in a limited nuclear exchange, I think the northern hemisphere is toast. What's her name? Kathleen Caldecott was talking that if there was going to be another major earthquake in Japan, she's getting all her family out of Boston.
I heard that one. Well, I noticed that the cable channel one of the cable channels that deals with the older movies has all of a sudden started rerunning On the Beach, which, if you have not seen that, it's a very, very powerful anti-nuclear war statement. Anyway, Mike, we're going to let you go.
All right, thanks.
All right, we're going to close the phone lines. Get on back to the news here. We're talking about the economy. Obviously, the phone call from the Canadian trade deal with the EU, permanently committing the Canadian people to pay interest on money borrowed from private banks rather than avail themselves of the Canadian Central Bank, which is supposed to provide interest-free loans for infrastructure development. Got to make everybody a debt slave. That's what the New World Order wants, is all of the human race as a permanent debt slave to the bankers. It's the return of feudalism or serfdom. That's what they're literally trying to bring us back to. Well, apparently, after Tillerson warned Russia that the U.S. is going to remove Assad, the stock market took a little bit of a stumble, which I think puts the lie to this idea that wars are always good for the economy, because apparently the stock market certainly doesn't feel that way right now. Over in Spain, their finance minister is claiming that their most Italian bank is still solvent, that the problems that are happening in Italy are not going to spread to Spain. I seriously doubt that's accurate, but it sounds to me like they're already getting ready to try and crank the propaganda out that, oh, it's not all that bad, and we're going to get through. Just do what the government tells you, and stay loyal to the bankers, and everything will be just fine. Apparently, Bitcoin is a huge, huge success in Japan. There's predicting that by this summer, there will be 260,000 stores where Bitcoin is accepted. Now, here in the U.S., they're trying to crack down on virtual currencies. There's one that somebody was trying to introduce me to out here, and they just got declared illegal by Hawaii. You will use Federal Reserve notes. You will be a slave to the private central banks. That's what life in America is right now. To nobody's surprise, the Barclays traders who were involved in that LIBOR manipulation have been acquitted. And, of course, the bankers never eat their own. So we knew that was going to be the outcome. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about the economic news here. Somebody just sent me this story saying that we may be able to explain Donald Trump's reversal on his war policy when we remember that George Soros backed Jared Kushner's venture cadre with $250 million. So maybe Trump can't be bought, but apparently his family can be. Alrighty, now over in Iraq, Iraq is signaling that they're going to basically go rogue on OPEC's cap on oil production. And they're going to increase their domestic oil production by 600,000 barrels by the end of the year. And that's going to drive oil and gas prices down until the war really cranks up, because war takes a lot of oil and gas. Very alarming story over at Blacklisted News, and yeah, this is true for a lot of people I know. 50% of Americans are literally living payday to payday. 1/3 of Americans could not write a $500 emergency check. Something comes up, big break on the car, medical emergency. They just don't have it. They just don't have it. We are being driven down into abject poverty. At the same time, they're whining and crying that they're not buying stuff at our shopping malls. What's wrong with those people? We'll give them credit cards. People don't want credit cards. They want to be debt-free because they're beginning to realize debt is a form of enslavement. We are all crying freedom. Apparently, another retailer, Route 21, has missed their interest payments on their loan. They can't even pay the principal. They've just been making payments on the interest. They missed that. And they may be going into bankruptcy. Now, here's a story that came out of Breitbart. The Internal Revenue Service has apparently been seizing millions of dollars from innocent individuals and businesses because it was easier than going after terrorists and drug dealers. This is from the Treasury Department's own internal watchdog. And they're saying the IRS misused a law that was intended to crack down on organized crime and terrorism, and instead simply went after innocent people and plundered their money because it was easier. Sort of the federal version of civil forfeiture. Now, let's talk about Europe, immigration. The globalists are uniting around Macron. Emmanuel Macron, who is running against Marine Le Pen. They're all pushing him because he's a globalist and he's tied in with the Rothschilds, and they're really pushing him the way they were pushing Hillary Clinton in this last election. The French voters, though, are not really going along with it because apparently both Macron and Fillon are being denounced as liars for carrying on dishonest campaigns. And French voters are just completely turned off by them. Now, over in Brussels, they're still making noises about how Britons are going to regret leaving the EU, and they're going to change their mind, and they're going to be begging to return to the dictatorship of Brussels and the slavery of the European Central Bank. And Duncan Smith said, no, actually looking at the economic forecasts, you're going to want to be joining us somewhere down the road here. Now, members of the European Parliament are basically going public, blasting the EU's migrant and refugee policy, saying it is disastrous, it is hypocritical, it is causing all kinds of hardship all across Europe. And, of course, Brussels is still on board with this idea of we're going to blur all the people together. Hungary and Poland are refusing to take any more migrants. Brussels is saying, well, if you won't take your migrants, you can get out of the bloc. That might backfire on them. Poland and Hungary are already talking about leaving the European Union. So, good news is, illegal border crossings from Mexico into the U.S. are at a 17-year low. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, as you know, following Trump's election victory, a lot of liberals decided they were going to throw tantrums, grandstand, all this kind of nonsense, and it turned off a lot of people. And it's actually brought a considerable amount of economic harm to these individuals who blurred the line between their political views and their place of business. And one of the hardest hit has been Starbucks, which is sort of a liberal icon, if you will, getting together and talking. But people have stopped going in there, and now Starbucks is conceding that this was a wrong thing for them to do, to bash on Trump, and they're trying to lure conservatives to come back and buy their coffee there. Personally, I don't plan to ever go into a Starbucks ever again. But the worst hit is Shia LaBeouf. He's an actor. You've seen him in Transformers, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And apparently he has a new movie out, Man Down. And it just ran for a week in Great Britain, only in one theater. It's kind of a pre-screening, and they sold a grand total of 3 tickets. $26. That's the box office. So we can either call this the Shia LaBeouf effect or the Starbucks effect. Mixing politics with business is never a good idea. And apparently Shia's anti-Trump tantrums have tarnished his star, or more to the point, harmed his so-called bankability. And if you don't know what I mean about that, when you are a movie star or TV star, there's a factor called bankability, which is that if you sign on to a production, and we have just lost our connection to RBN, and let's see what's happening here. Okay, can you call me and see if we get back? I have no idea what happened. We may have lost our studio or had some kind of a crash. Anyway, I'm going to finish this story for the people on Ban User. Bankability is where you're a big star, a known star, a name star, and merely signing onto a project will make investors believe that they can invest in that film project because automatically people will go to see the movie just because that particular star is in it. That's bankability. And it looks like Shia LaBeouf has damaged that here. Let me see if I can get back in touch with our control room. Okay, well, I have no idea what happened. Let's make sure that I'm still connected to the net. Yes, I'm still connected to the net. So the problem is at RBN's side. All right, well, I'm going to keep on doing the stories here until we can come on back. And there we go. All right. And we are back here, and I don't know what the problem was. Maybe the hamster fell asleep in that wheel again that powers the control board. Okay, so let's get on back here and get things set up. Yeah, it was a weird drop there. Maybe it's the hackers. I mean, they're going after my server. Now then, over at the Bundy Ranch trial, they're not even trying to make it look like this is any kind of a fair, honest, objective court trial. It's a kangaroo court. And Judge Gloria Navarro is just making a mockery of the justice system today. But then that seems to be a growing trend, looking at some of the stuff coming out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal. And so this first Bunkerville trial is underway in Las Vegas. The prosecution was given 5 weeks to present their case, and Judge Gloria Navarro is basically shutting down the defense. She's only allowing one witness, and she's telling the witness what to testify. Now, the witness, Garrett Frenner, was a witness to the illegal slaughter of the Bundy cattle by the Bureau of Land Management, and Judge Navarro is saying, you may not testify to that. The only thing you can testify is which of the defendants you saw with guns. And apparently they're scaring the witnesses. They're saying, if I think you're committing perjury, I will have you taken out of the courtroom in handcuffs. They're calling the witnesses unindicted co-conspirators. It's just in your face. Don't expect fair treatment when you go to the court system. And I'm not surprised to find more and more courts are banning people who are talking about jurors' rights or the Constitution. It is a hopelessly corrupt system. Now, little bit of good news coming out of the snowflakes tantrums over Donald Trump. Somebody has filed a complaint with the Internal Revenue Service to revoke the 501c3 tax-exempt status of the Southern Poverty Law Center, basically saying that they were directly campaigning against President Donald Trump, and they were, and it's a violation of the 501c3 rules. And I think that would be really kind of good, because the Southern Poverty Law Center is a very left-leaning organization. They've have me on their list of websites you should never, ever, ever, ever look at, or your nose will drop off. So it's coming back to haunt them. Now, here is a bizarre story. And let's see. We're going to open the phone lines, get some calls in here. Very bizarre story. This came out of Ib Times in Great Britain. Chinese hackers linked to espionage campaign on board directors of Google, Amazon, IBM. And they're saying that this was very alarming ahead of the trade summit this week between President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Security experts claim a nation-state hacking group conducted espionage on a number of key industry players and lobbyists, with links to the talks. Now, this operation, called Operation Trade Secret, used malware in an attempt to snoop on private sector officials. Now, the only place where they say Chinese hackers is basically in that headline. And with that recent revelation that the CIA has developed a means to frame third parties for CIA hacking attacks, it is reckless and irresponsible to claim that China is behind these attacks. For one thing, I can't imagine Chinese people coming up with a name like Operation Trade Secret. But think on back to that APEC scandal, Seattle APEC in 1997. U.S. agents were caught breaking into computers of conference attendees to steal their business secrets. So it is pointless to say it's China. Could be anybody. Could be the CIA. Could be the NSA. You cannot really know. The current state of the Internet is set up to allow deception, just like all of your machines are backdoored to allow spying. Now, I'm getting emails from people talking about the obvious attacks on the independent media. Google and YouTube are doing a demonetization war on independent media. They're trying to bankrupt all of us out here in the independent media. And maybe it's time for us to do to Google and YouTube what we did to Starbucks, which is we take our business somewhere else, because there are now alternative resources to Facebook and YouTube. There's Vimeo, Scene Life, Gab, VK, use different search engines from Google, such as Yandex and DuckDuckGo. They all work very, very well, and they're not censoring the search results. And I got another email from somebody, I think I mentioned this earlier in the show, that every time they try and post a link to one of my articles on Facebook, they'll go back in and it'll be gone. And they have been communicating with their Facebook followers saying, did you ever see this thing I posted? And they're all saying, no. So Facebook is now censoring. You got to switch to new providers. All right, now then. Let's talk a little bit about human-caused global warming. Very interesting story that came on out from Activist Post. The ruling class wants you to be afraid of climate change. They want you to be afraid of everything, because fear is how they rule and control you. And they're still pushing 2016 was the hottest year on record, blah, 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 blah. And we just had another really hard winter, lasting well into spring. Oh, we got a whole bunch of callers waiting here. I'm going to get to you real soon. And apparently, it's now come on out that NOAA's temperature data is being so severely adjusted that basically half of it is a complete fake and a fraud. NOAA never releases the raw temperature data because it doesn't support the global warming hysteria. They do a statistical correction, is what they call it, but all they're really doing is, as you go forward in time, they add more heat. By the way, Colorado got another snowstorm here. All right, let's take some phone calls. Jeff in Minnesota, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, about the financial shenanigans, where they can tap into all this unlimited money and spend it on their special things, and then, lo and behold, nothing was accomplished that was for the public good, what all that money was supposed to do. And there's no accountability.
No, unfortunately, there isn't. And certainly within our country, financial people and bankers can literally get away with crimes.
I mean, this is what's called the classic bust. You know what a bust out is, right?
Yes.
You know, like in the Tony Soprano with his friend in the, you know, that lost money gambling and owned a sporting goods store, and then, you know, Tony's passing out CD-ROM players to all his friends, because, you know, but this is what's happened. All this money has been transferred and been used to do all this evil stuff that now is coming to be to the light. And it was a bust out, you know.
Well, the big problem though is in their greed and money addiction. The money junkies rigged the system so that all the wealth from ordinary people would flow into their pockets. But now there isn't enough currency out here to support our economy. And that's why you're seeing all these retailers shut down and all these loans going bad and all these defaults and all the rest of it. The system is being destroyed by the greed at the top.
Yeah, the engine's being ruined because there's no oil getting down to cool where the heat and the friction and all the movement is.
That's a good metaphor. That's a good metaphor.
And yeah, it's anyway, and like listening to your show and stuff. Like I got this Drupal message when I went to your site about 40 minutes ago. Because I wasn't, you know, I was going to it and it wouldn't load and it just
we were under hack attack, and they love to attack my server when I'm doing the radio show because they realize I'm unable to basically do anything about it. So it's basically running on the automated systems. But anytime you go to my website,
okay, thanks a lot.
All right, we're gonna let you go, and we're gonna go to D in Minnesota. Aloha, D. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike.
Hello.
I haven't called in 1,000 years. How are you?
Doing quite well.
This whole Trump, North Korea, Syria business, it's crazy.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
I voted for him at the last second. I didn't think I was going to, and now I'm starting to regret my decision. But I was also here when the whole Jesse Ventura, when he got elected, and he was under a lot of pressure.
Yes.
He never caved. They kept at him and at him and at him. Finally, they went after his kids, and he just said, to hell with it, and didn't run again. And it looks like Donald Trump does not have the kind of guts that Jesse did. Jesse would not be going out half-cocked like this.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. A lot of people are very disappointed, and basically Trump just guaranteed he's going to be a one-term president. And, of course, last year my campaigning was more about keeping Hillary out than supporting Donald Trump. I would have gone for Bernie Sanders if he'd won the nomination, to be very honest about it. But,
I would have rather voted for him myself.
Yeah, the only way I would support Trump in 2020 is if Hillary comes back for another run. But that's the only circumstance where I'd side with Trump.
Well, if we all haven't been blown up by then, because if he does this stuff, it's probably going to go to a World War III, and it's probably going to go nuclear.
Yeah, we may not have an election in 2020.
Once those buttons are pushed, it's done.
Yeah.
You can't turn back. Somebody's cooler heads have got to prevail. This is, and when I'd heard about the chemical weapons attack, I was looking for what should be there and isn't. And the biggest thing is, why would Assad do something that stupid?
That's where the story breaks down. He's winning the war. He was getting support from the U.S. Everything was going his way. It makes absolutely no sense at all.
No sense. And he's got an election coming up in a couple of years. He needs, in order to run a country, you need to have popular support. And if you're using chemical weapons against your own people, you're not going to get that.
No, you're not.
So he wouldn't do it. And where would he get the weapons anyway?
Yeah, he turned all of his weapons over to the United Nations to be destroyed. The only people that provably have
the
these
Russians confirmed it.
Yeah, the only people who actually have these weapons in Syria are the U.S.-backed rebels, and it's been documented.
They were bragging about it.
Yeah, they were, and taking pictures of themselves.
All over the foreign press.
There have been photos of some of these chemical weapons in the rebel depots, and they're stamped with American chemical company labels. So that's where they're getting the stuff from. But I mean, we don't have to go through all that stuff. The story just does not make any sense at all. This gas attack, all it helps is the rebels, the U.S. Warhawks, and Israel. And that's it. It's insane to think that Assad would have done this at this particular time. Even the Fox News commenter this morning was saying it doesn't make sense that he would do this at this moment. Let's not get into the question of whether Assad has ever used chemical weapons on his people or anything, but why would he do it now? It just does not make any sense.
Doesn't make sense. And when I see all that, I wonder, what's Israel going to do now?
Well,
there's been a flood of it on the cable channels.
Well, I think Israel's going to go on in and start bombing Syria themselves and really kick this thing off going, because we've been getting a flood of Holocaust stories all over the media, and that means Israel's going to do something really, really nasty. Dee, I got to let you go.
Yeah, we've seen it on the TV too.
Yeah, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Thanks, Mike.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take a few more phone calls here. Dee in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to keep on the gas attack in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching Fox News last night, and as they're talking about Assad gassing his citizens, along the ticker on the bottom there says that there was a Syrian airstrike in Idlib, that it was a warehouse that held chemical weapons by the rebels. So, I mean, if you put two and two together, I mean, you could see how, the Syrian Air Force strikes that warehouse and then everybody gets sick because there's chemicals in the warehouse. But yet, they want to go take the word of just some random guy who's like, oh, yeah, there's planes and they dropped chemical bombs all of a sudden. It's just, it's crazy to me. Like all the news media, it almost seems like they almost bank on the fact that nobody reads the bottom ticker there. It's like,
well, I think that was probably that was somebody's mistake here, because Syria is saying that that's what happened, that there was a secret chemical weapon depot. The rebels were getting this stuff. Apparently, they were getting ready to use it, and it was hit by a weapon during the normal course of battle. Russia is at least officially going along with that explanation, but there are a lot of other people who are pointing to the long history of these false flag chemical weapon deceptions and hoaxes by the white helmets and saying, no, they did this deliberately to justify this reversal of course on Syria. One of the things that's very alarming is if you look at all the weapons that have been sent over to the border with Russia, a lot of them are still painted with the desert camo, and apparently they are now being loaded on ships to be sent down through the Bosphorus to the coast of Syria. So this is something that they were getting ready to do for quite a while. It didn't just happen by accident.
Yeah, and I agree with the previous caller and Ron Paul and everybody else is saying there's no reason why he would do this, especially like you're saying. I mean, he's basically pushing ISIS out of his country, making, huge inroads. And like you said, the U.S. is kind of softening their stance, and then all of a sudden this happens. Nobody's buying it. You can't. It makes no sense whatsoever.
No, I mean, they're laughing at Nikki Haley when she's out there saying Russia just makes. Oh, we just lost our. Okay. I have no idea what's going on. It's probably the hackers. All right. Okay. Let's try and reconnect one more time here. Okay. There we are. Okay. And we are back on the air again. Boy, terrible technology, or people are messing with our communications, and certainly we have plenty of evidence for that. All right, I need to scroll back up and see where the callers are, because I believe the next one is... Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I got you. We're going to break.
Oh, we're on a break. Yes, you're right.